Subcommittee to order. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Representative Carringer.
Present.
Representative Cassada. Representative Clemens. Representative Hurt.
Here.
Representative Love.
Here.
Chairman Sapicki. Chairman Reagan.
Here.
Chairman White.
Here.
Chairman Haston.
Here.
Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Before we begin, are there any announcements or personal orders that anyone would like to make? I would like to take a second. This is Representative Love's debut here today. He had a previous engagement last time. I'd like to give him an opportunity to introduce himself real quick if he'd like to.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and it's my pleasure to be on the K-12 Subcommittee. Harold Love Jr., State Representative for District 58, which includes parts of Nashville. So very glad to have a good number of colleges in my district. An opportunity to make sure that as our K-12 conversations focus on that progression, that we also look toward how it impacts, of course, their opportunity to either go to career or to college after they finish their 12th grade year. Happy to be here, Mr. Chairman, and happy to have served again with Chairman White, as we have served about 8 years now on the Education Committee. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity.
Thank you, Representative Love. We do have a couple of items on the calendar today. Does anybody else have any other announcements or personal orders? Seeing none. We will be on item number 1, House Bill 46, sponsored by Representative Lamar. I believe you, first of all, do we have a motion?
Motion.
Second. Properly motioned. I believe you have an amendment as well. Representative Lamar, you are recognized. Do we have a motion on the amendment?
Motion. Second.
All right, and I believe it's Amendment 3703. Is that what you have as well?
Yes, sir.
All right, Representative Lamar, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, committee, and thanks for staying late. I know it's tough. This amendment was brought to me by the Department of Health as an improvement to the bill, which all it does is instead of when the lead source is taken out, instead of just notifying the local health department, they have to also notify the State Department of Health, the State Department of Education, any other state entities involved. So that's what this amendment does.
Thank you. You've heard the explanation for the amendment. Does anyone have any questions? Chairman Watt, you're recognized.
So the amendment does not rewrite the bill?
No, it does not rewrite the bill. It adds additional accountability partners in reporting when you have the lead source and it's testing over 15 ppb. It's that the original, my bill says you have to notify the local health department. This amendment says not only the local, but the State Department of Health and the State Department of Education and Environment and Conservation.
Chairman Watt.
And who brought you the amendment?
The Department of Health.
The State Department? Okay. Okay. My questions will be more on the bill, so I will defer that till we get to that.
Any other questions for the sponsor on the amendment? Seeing none, we'll be voting on adopting Amendment 3703. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. All those opposed say no. All right, we are back on the bill as amended, House Bill 0046. Representative Lamar, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill is the piece of legislation I brought to you all last year and we passed on the floor. What it does is it's creating a statewide lead testing program developed by the State Department of Health and the State Department of Education to create accountability and processes around testing. What it does is require Department of Education consultation with health to develop a lead testing program in all traditional public schools, public charter schools, and child care programs. We're pushing this bill because on December 20th, 2022, the United States EPA, under the previous administration, tightened the federal lead and copper rules to create more accountability for testing in our schools. And so what we are trying to do is catch up to the federal level. This was something already even put in place by the previous administration, not the current administration, to ensure that we have unified testing in our schools with our drinking water and making sure we don't have lead in our drinking water. And if you've been following what's going on in Memphis, Tennessee right now, we're under a boil water advisory because of we haven't been doing the necessary testing, building up our infrastructure. Everybody in the city is now having to boil water before they can brush their teeth, they can wash their face, before they can drink anything, which is highlights and synopsis to the fact that we have to make sure we're putting things in place in our schools to make sure our children are not drinking contaminated water.
Thank you, Representative Lamar. You've heard the explanation. Any questions? Chairman Sapicki, you're recognized.
Thank you. I'm going to vote for your bill today, but I do have some concerns about the fiscal note. So if I understand what you're saying is we're going to go from 20 parts to 15 parts, okay? And they're still going to go ahead and test, and they're going to make sure that if they're above 15 million now, is that 15 million?
15 parts per billion, yes.
Thank you very much. That then they're going to have to do remediation to get that back down below for the safety of the drinking water. Currently, TDEC has a program called the WIN Grant that allows these districts or something to draw this money down to be able to help in the remediation costs. And according to the fiscal note, it looks like they've received $697,000 to date from the WIN fund and only spent $3,400. And they're asking for another amount of $332. This is my only concern, is they have roughly, hopefully, $1 million to do remediation. If by lowering it from 20 to 15 for the safety of our citizens, if we get a lot of districts or a lot of daycare centers that are above that, and they start to have to do remediation, I want to make sure that we have an ongoing fund here that can make sure that they can fund that. If we don't get this WIN grant by TDEC, this becomes an unfunded mandate to everybody else, even our daycare centers. So today I'm going to vote for this bill for you, but what I'd like to hear from TDEC is what happens if we don't get the grant? Because then it becomes an unfunded mandate to our locals. And so next week, Mr. Chairman, if it's okay, I'd like to get testimony from TDEC. Are they going to be able to make sure that this doesn't turn into an unfunded mandate if they don't get that WIN grant anymore?
Representative Lamar.
I will make sure I have more information for you and will check with TDEC to make sure I can answer all of your questions.
I would like to testify.
Absolutely.
Representative Cassidy, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had two questions. The first, that's a concern. I mean, historically, we keep bills in subcommittee till they're ready to move on to full committee. And to me, that would be a reason that we should just keep it here until we answer that question. And I'll defer to the chairmans on what they recommend. The question I have is, so does the new federal mandate that's coming down, is it mandate that the state take over the testing, or does it still allow the LEAs, the locals, to do it?
Representative Lamar, you're recognized.
It's requiring LEAs, and in this new mandate, it now includes elementary schools and childcare facilities. My bill tightens it up to include all public school, charter schools, and childcare facilities. So they're mandating that whoever tests water or is the primary water testing, a designee in that county, they have to test elementary schools and childcare facilities and make sure they're 15 parts per billion under. So they aligned, and it's called the new lead and copper rule put out by the EPA.
Mr. Chairman, follow up.
Yes, Representative Cassidy.
So my question is a little bit different. My question is, does the federal mandate that came down from the previous administration, does it mandate that the state must take over the testing, or does it still allow the local education to do the testing?
It allows the local education to do it. It doesn't mandate the state.
So I'm not above taking responsibility away from locals when they exceed what they're assigned to do constitutionally, but I just don't see that I think it's just best to leave it with the LEAs. That's just my personal opinion on that. But, Mr. Chairman, I defer to you and to the chairman over here. Do we keep this kind of bill in subcommittee till we find out the answer to the Chairman Sapicki's question?
Chairman Reagan, you are recognized.
Thank you. And my question is purely one for satisfying clarity on the record. You mentioned child care programs. I want to make sure that we have on the record that's child care programs that are certified by the department.
Yes, sir.
Under Chapter 1 and Part 11, as opposed to just any child care program.
Representative
That
Lamar.
is correct.
Thank you.
Chairman White, you're recognized.
Thank you, and I agree. Representative Lamar, you always bring good concepts for committees. Where I'm trying to, just like Representative Sapicki, is trying to make sure that any legislation that's passed is workable things. I understand, too, that the federal EPA lead and copper rule under the last administration, but it isn't being changed now, I think, under the current one. I was reading that. So when you were pulling this together, now you've got on here TDEC, Commissioner of Health, Department of Health, and the local governing bodies. Did you consult with them as far as being a part of this bill? How did they get into the bill, or are they okay with it, I guess I'm trying to say also?
I have not heard any negative feedback. When we passed this bill on the House floor yesterday, last year, I've had opportunities to, to be open to any pushback, and they have not given me any pushback outside of the suggested amendment that I applied to the bill from the Department of Health. So I've received no pushback. I had a conversation with Shelby County Schools about this particular lead, and their biggest concern was just if we can push it out to 36 hours. As of right now, I kept it at 24, but I'm open to giving them 36 hours to respond and notify parents, the Department of Health, the Department of Education, and the Department of Environment and Conservation to let them know they have removed the lead drinking water.
Sure. Okay, well, I'm in agreement with what you're trying to do to protect our children's health. I just want to make sure we do it the right way, and I still got a lot of unanswered questions. Representative Sapicki, the ones he was asking, I agree with Representative Casta. We need to keep it in here. Let's get whoever we need in here next week to answer some of these questions, the unfunded mandate part. So that would be my recommendation, that we keep it in here, or else we set a bad precedent if we move bills out of the subcommittee.
I do want to give, I have a couple other representatives that are on the list, and then we'll come back to that motion. Representative Love, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I do understand the concern that members have about the fiscal impact. And I suppose the new fiscal note will come out with this amendment if the amendment's put on, because we're looking at the old fiscal note, I suppose, from the bill without the amendment, if I'm correct about that.
To respond to your question, the fiscal note that came out yesterday with an amendment on it hasn't changed. It's not significant.
Okay, so if that's the case, then the new fiscal note with the new amendment says it's still not significant, correct? My colleague's concern is that it may be impacting local governments, and we won't know fully because there won't be another fiscal note to come out. Is that correct?
Representative Lamar.
Unless I were to change this bill in any way, it stands as what it is right now, not significant. If we were to amend this, change something, it could impact the fiscal note, and we'll be looked at that again.
Okay.
But as of right now, with the amendment, it's not significant.
All right. I just want to make sure that the concerns that members have are able to be addressed, and that the bill just isn't hung up in subcommittee in limbo and not passed to full committee. I've seen a number of things happen in Education Committee, including a promise that if we pass out from some subcommittee, we'll hold it in full. I recall my freshman year in the old plaza, in the old plaza, in committee room 30 or 29. Representative Love, will you promise to hold this bill in full? Yes, sir. Chairman Brooks, I'll hold it here in full if you let it out of subcommittee. But I just want to make sure it doesn't get held up in limbo. So I'm fine with the motion to hold it here, as long as the questions that we're going to ask of the sponsor are able to be answered, and not just questions that cannot be answered and it gets held up in this subcommittee. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Lamar.
Thank you, Representative Love, and thank you, Chairman. What I would do is I would roll this bill a week, get with TDEC, ask them to come speak with you here in subcommittee to answer your questions, and we can go from there. Is that okay with the committee?
Chairman Sapicki, you're recognized.
Mr. Chairman, if the representative rolls the bill, that counts against her. If we roll the bill as a committee, that's on us. So I would make a motion that we roll the bill as a committee to get testimony next week from TDEC. Therefore, it doesn't affect her position.
Representative Clemens, I had him on the list for a while here. Representative Clemens, you're recognized.
Don't make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question was kind of in line with Representative Love's. I certainly understand and I respect the fiscal concerns nature here. But I've seen committees operate in the years I've been here. I mean, we're a substance-based committee looking at the substance of legislation, and there's a fiscal committee for a reason, there's a budget committee for a reason. It's my understanding, and this is completely within the chairman's discretion and the other committee members. I just want to know up front as we start out here in this committee, if we're going to be looking at substance of bills or substance of bills and fiscal nature of them and doing two jobs. So, I just want to, be mindful of setting this precedent of how we approach these pieces of legislation while fully appreciate the concerns. I'm not sure that's necessarily it's not necessarily our responsibility or our jurisdiction. If there is a fiscal issue, it will be addressed by the appropriate committee. I say it with full, respect and discretion to the committee, but let's just be cognizant of if we're going to start holding bills because of fiscal concerns or a fiscal note, that's going to set a precedent, I fear. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I think I have less concerns about the fiscal note right now because I think the amendment shows what it's at. I think that the concerns about some of the standpoint of what TDEC might have to say is more of a concern to me right now, and I will entertain the motion of rolling this a week at the will of the committee, if that be the will of the committee. Seeing no objection, we'll be rolling this bill 1 week. House
Thank
Bill
you, committee.
46. Thank you, Representative. Item number 2 on the calendar has been taken off notice. So with that, if there's no other announcements, does anyone have Representative Clemens, you were recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry I wasn't here at the beginning for announcements. I just want to say, today I'm thankful my oldest child finally got to attend his first day of middle school. He has been... Thank you. And I just want to say I'm proud to see MNPS represented here today, and I appreciate the good work MNPS does and its lobbyists and what they've done to ensure the safety of all of our children. But I appreciate that. And my oldest child is very excited to be back in the classroom, and I don't know if he knows what he's in for in middle school, but well, let's say a prayer for him. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I was more excited when the parents were more excited than the kids in my household. But without any other, does anybody have a motion to adjourn? Probably a motion with that. We'll stand adjourned.